Welcome to the Speakeasy Studio. My name is Adam Hubble. I'm joined here today by Bryce and Bre DeHaan, the BD2 real estate duo. Guys, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely privileged to have us. We appreciate it.
So I met these two agents a few weeks ago, I guess a month or so ago now, at an open house that they were doing. And a few things stood out to me just about the way they conducted themselves during the open house, the way that they welcomed guests that were coming into the house and went into, gathering information and just kind of how they conducted the open house. But so then a couple weeks ago, I was lucky enough to join them at an open house and really get to know them. And they told me their story of how they got together as husband and wife, and some background on both of their younger selves and kind of how they got into real estate. So being there are roughly 55,000 real estate agents in Arizona, I think having a unique story is what sets you apart. It makes you who you are, and it sets you apart from the conversation. So I am so excited to have them in here to help them tell their story and to give them a platform to tell their story and what makes them unique versus other agents. So without further ado, however far back you want to start, but I know there's a few things that are really, really cool about your story. So go ahead and just tell us about kind of how you two first met, and then go into kind of how you got into real estate from there.
Yeah. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think I always tell the story.
Okay, she can take this, and I'll start to add in if there's any missing pieces.
Sure.
Yeah. So I knew him in middle school, and he kind of moved away and then came back. And when he came back, we met at a family friend's house and got each other's numbers, started talking. We were 14 years old. Well, yeah, he was 14, I was 15. And started talking for a couple months, and then met at the movies, went on a little date, and started dating each other. And then about a year later, some things went down with his family, and he ended up moving into my house with me, my mom, and my sister. So we had some fun times there. And then we were together for that takes us to 4 years, right? 4. And we decided we wanted to get married. Bryce wanted to join the military. So he joined the Army. He joined the Army. And we ran off to Vegas at 17 and 18 years old. We got married and came back, had a ceremony. He left just a couple of days.
I was the only married guy in my entire high school. Yeah. So I think I hold that record for that school, as I was the only guy, and people were looking at me crazy. After that ceremony in Vegas, we went to the downtown strip, so Fremont Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wearing this bright pink shirt because I was like 17 and had this ego. I'm like, I'm married, And I had this design cut into my head. I thought it was super cool. But as we're walking down, people were looking at us crazy. They're like, she had a just married thing, and they're like, what are you talking about? And at the time, we thought we had it all figured out, but there was a road ahead for sure.
Did you wear the pink shirt while you got married?
I'll have to show you a picture.
Yep.
I'll have to give it to you guys, and then maybe we can even put it in.
Yeah.
We got married at the Little White Chapel where Elvis got married.
Yeah, send me that picture and we'll add it
Yeah.
in here.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, I'll send it over.
Yeah. So definitely interesting already from the beginning, basically sleeping on her couch through high school.
Right.
And
Very
then,
unusual.
Yeah, definitely. And then that was pretty much the only option was, you go into the military and you don't have, they're not just going to pay for her to come with me,
Right.
And she's like brand new out of high school. She's in college. And so that was really the most feasible option was to get married.
Yeah.
And so we knew it was gonna happen right when I graduated anyway. But It was like, well, let's just do it now so I can sign this contract and start that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in June of 2016, we'll date it, he went off to the military, left for basic training. And then in November of 2016, he graduated basic training. And I moved out to Georgia. We found out we were going to be living in Hinesville, Georgia. Little town.
Little town. Nothing but wood lines back there. 2-lane highways. People running into deer. It's crazy out there. Yeah, Georgia's a different animal. Yeah.
Yeah. So stationed in Fort Stewart, Georgia, and actually lived out in Little Wissy, which nobody can ever say that word.
I try to spell that one.
Little Wissy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what
pretty
everyone
much.
used to call us. Oh, you live in Little Wussy? I'm like, no, it's Ludo Wissy. So what, Ludi or Dowici?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Shout out Ludo Wissy.
There's only like,
Yeah.
I think a couple thousand people there. They had a Piggly Wiggly. But it was cool because it was our first house on our own.
Oh yeah.
And so before kids, we had our dog that we got in high school. So it was the first like freedom. And of course, that was a big start to our first experience because that was her big move, 5 days across the United States, you know? And so,
and
Yeah.
that's because your basic training was in Georgia.
well, so my basic training was in Fort Benning, Georgia, which is, what is that, near Columbus?
Yeah, right outside of Columbus, an
And
hour
so-
from Atlanta.
And so, but I ended up getting stationed not too far from there. So,
Nice.
so about 45 minutes out of Savannah, which is
Yeah.
right on the coast. So
The military picks where they want to station you, so you never have a choice. You can kind of give them, once you're in, you can give them a choice of like 3 of your top favorites, and then they just station you wherever they think you're needed. So I think I think it was like a month before he graduated, he got his papers and it said Georgia, so we knew we were going to be in Georgia. So he did Fort Benning for his training, and then Fort Stewart was our first station.
yeah, 3rd ID, 3rd Infantry Division, and that was the regular Army. So it was met a lot of great dudes there. One of her best friends that was actually there for the birth of our first son, still in contact, and she lives in North Carolina.
Florida.
Florida.
She lives in Florida.
Dude, it's all in that area, whatever. Shout out Courtney. Anyway, but it's cool because we met a lot of great people, but that was just that first year. And so we ended up doing quite a bit of moving, actually.
Yeah.
But that first introduction to Georgia was crazy. Like, we talked to people, they're like, I don't know if I want to move to Arizona. It's so hot. And I'm like, you should go to Georgia when it's 100 with 100% humidity,
Oh, yeah.
and you can't breathe out there.
Yeah.
So that was a cool introduction too.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
100 degrees and humidity is no joke. And I think too, it's worth saying that you guys moved there from San Diego.
Yes.
So
yeah.
it's-
So
yeah.
the most beautiful weather that you can get.
Yeah.
Right. We moved and went to the complete opposite
Yeah.
side.
San Diego to Georgia is not your average commute, but
Yeah.
it's what you had to do.
Exactly.
What we had to do, it was good though. We're glad we're in this area now because we missed the green. We were in Lake Havasu for a few years. It's just all desert. I love that place, but it's just all desert. We're like, let's get some trees around here, But anyway.
Yeah. So let's see, moved to Fort Stewart, and shortly after we got pregnant with our first. So Zane is our oldest. He's now 5, and we had him in Little Wissy. And then 5 days after he was born, packed up our whole house and moved closer to the base because I wanted him home more. And then, of course, we move, and 2 weeks later, he leaves for 2 months, and he comes out here to 29 Palms and does training for 2 months. So he was gone for 2 months, came home for Christmas. He was home for 2 weeks again, and then left to go special operations. And he was in special operations training in RASP for 6 months. So the whole first 9 months of Zane's life, he was pretty much gone.
Gosh.
Yeah, so he was in RASP and Fort Benning again. So thankfully, we're still same state.
Oh, yeah.
So I had about a 5-hour drive. And so a few weekends, I was able to go out. So when he graduated from airborne training, I went out there for the weekend, stayed with a friend over there. And so I had Zane. And then I think Easter, he got the weekend off for Easter during training. So I went out there again. And then for graduation, I think that was about all I got to see him.
There's not a lot. I mean, anybody who's listened to this who's been through it, you don't have your phone, you don't have those type of things. There's not a lot of contact, but
there was 8 weeks. There was 8 weeks out of that training period with zero contact, no writing, no phones, no seeing each other, no nothing, zero
which
contact.
I like to put this into perspective too, because I know guys that and women that are in right now or have been gone for a lot longer than that, been through a lot, but try to put into perspective, we grew as kids together basically. So
Yeah.
from 14, like our minds are developing as children.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you say teenager maybe, but like really
Right.
we were operating as children. And so to grow into that, to be like, most people when they graduate high school, they're not even sure what they're going to do. They're like,
Right.
I'll go to community college. I'll go get a job with my uncle. Like, I don't know what to do. And that's most people. But to get thrusted into like, now you have your own rental, you're away from all of your family, all this stuff. And then, by the way, all this stuff was like unforeseen. Like, I don't know what our perspective was, but we didn't realize like, oh, there's going to be no contact. We figured, oh, well, when I deploy down the road, like that's when we'll not talk to each other.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll prepare for that because we'll know we're going to leave, bags get packed. And so that whole process was just like, oh, this is really weird.
You're just
and
rolling
so
with the
from the
punches.
beginning, like, yeah, they sit you in a chair, take your phone away, shave your head completely bald. And then she has no idea what's going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's just the first basic training. And so all these different times, we weren't really aware of it until we got into the groove of the military lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
What a challenging time for both of you. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you're going through special forces training, but you're at home with a
With Zane,
newborn
yeah.
in a state where you
No
don't really know
family.
anyone. You're not on base. It's not like you have
Yeah.
a bunch of Army wives there.
Well,
supporting you
thankfully,
every day,
so
but-
we moved. That's why we moved from Ludowici to Hinesville, because so Ludowici is about 30 minutes from the base. Hinesville is literally like the base.
Oh, nice.
I just wasn't on base per se, but we were about 5 minutes outside of the gate, so
Right.
way
Right.
closer.
That's good.
My
But
best
still,
friend Courtney
you know.
was 5 minutes away. I got really close with her. Again, that's the one that she was in the birth room with us when we had Zane. I texted her and I was like, I'm having a baby. So she ran over and she watched Zane be delivered. So she was the only support that I had other than Bryce in the delivery room because my mom couldn't make
But
it
I
out.
didn't know what was going on. You know what I mean? Like, you have your first kid at 19. You're like, what's happening? I thought I had to have the full gown. I'm asking the doctor, like, where's the hair thing? And she's like, it's not a C-section. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Just please take care of her, you know? But yeah.
Yeah. So Zane actually came from a hurricane. So when Hurricane
It's either Irma or Matthew.
It was
One of the
Irma. When Hurricane Irma came through, I was 38 weeks pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And his sergeant told us we were in a mandatory evacuation. And he told us, like, you have to leave because if she goes into labor, there's no hospital for her to deliver here. So Savannah closed down, the base, Fort Stewart closed down, and then we left. So I thankfully had a friend who I knew in high school. We went over to the Atlanta area. We went to Dallas, and she let us stay there for the week. And then we drove back home. And the night that we drove home, I went into labor at 2:00 in the
Oh,
morning.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably like a little bit stress induced.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
had Zane. And then again, so he went Ranger. And then we were supposed to move to Washington. But I told him, I was like, I don't want to move to Washington. You know, I've made my roots here. We're already in Georgia. We have a kid. Like, can we go to 1st Battalion? And so he put in a request to go to 1st Battalion instead of 2nd.
It's like a special family request. And, you know, despite how crazy and so many people have, not a lot of people are Rangers. There's, I think, around 3,500 in the country, but the people that have been through know this. Like, it's rigorous for sure, and they're super strict, but they're people as well. Like, these people that are training you, they've been through a lot more than what I've ever been through. And so when you tell them something, and they have kids and stuff, so if you have something in the military, if you're planning on going into the military, just know, like, they will have your back with that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
Luckily.
And how long was your Ranger training?
Well, so it was, I don't remember dates on the dot, obviously, but it was around 2 to 3 months for the first one. And so I ended up going through the whole thing and then recycled. So it technically failed, right? So I got through the selection portion and then went to the assessment portion, and it was push-ups. And so we had this cadre, this instructor that was kind of notoriously known for failing people. He'd do the whole like 21, 21, 20. I'm like, I've done like 85 push-ups, you know, but I took it on the head. Like, and we ended up actually working with him down the road, and So ended up failing the push-ups, did my little sob story, in the dorm or in the barracks for a second. And then they just asked me if I wanted to go again. And I was like, I didn't even ask her, and I have my phone, nothing, and I knew if I did this, it was going to be another 3 months.
Yeah.
And like, I'm away from my kid, my wife, she has no idea. And so I basically just like, without even questioning it, I needed to do it. So I just was like, why are you even asking me this question? Like, yes.
Nice.
And so I wasn't hurt or anything. So I was able to go right back in, but I had to start from the very, very beginning. And so,
Oh man.
and I had already been through the airborne portion. So jumping out of planes, I already did that. So just had to go through another, but it was like a total of 6 months because there's a break in between. You have to wait for the cycles to like cross up perfectly or whatever it is. So there's multiple classes going on at the same time.
Right.
So
was it any easier going through the second time, kind of knowing what was coming at you?
No, because the process was similar, but it's new challenges because I've talked about this before. When you push past a certain point mentally, there's all the small problems that are going on go away. Like the aches in your knees, the anxiety because you don't know what to do, all that stuff goes away. You're pretty much just trying to finish the next task. And so that's all that's going through your mind the whole time. And so it was the same amount of difficulty because I was putting the same amount of effort in. And so
Gotcha.
there was a few things that changed about, different procedures throughout the whole process, but I generally kind of understood the idea and it made sense to me. And so, and I was also motivated because I could see the guys that had just continued without me essentially, and they were on a different floor, and I'd see them like now they're able to, maybe see their wives in the weekends, and I'm like still stuck here, like getting pounded, you know what I mean? And so, but it was never a question. It wasn't a question of how hard it was. It was just get through it. So there was a couple times though where, she saw me after it was done. I was beat up after that. I mean, my feet were like coming off.
It was gross.
Yeah, I could see my bones in my hips, because we wear flak jackets with canteens, and you go through this process called coal range, and it's not. If you're mentally tough, you can get through it, but there's just certain things that happen. When you're going through water for a week or two at a time, and your feet are just rotting, and you're wading through this stuff, and you're doing land navigation in the middle of nowhere, like the middle of the woods in Georgia, just middle of the night. You're not allowed to talk to anybody. You're not allowed to look at anybody. You're just like have a map, a protractor and a compass and a little piece of string. And you're just walking out there for days at a time, like in peaks and valleys, running into wild boars. And so like, there was a couple points where like, it got that close where I was like, maybe this isn't for me, but it was because mostly the physical pain. Yeah. And then eventually you click into another gear and it's like autopilot, and you're just like, this is not an option to stop. So you just go. And then by the end of that, what you kind of just set in your mind that it's going to happen. Then once you're on stage putting on the beret and everything, there's a pride that comes over you for sure. But
right.
You kind of know that you're going to make it if you're there.
Yeah. Little side note. Give him a map and a protractor and he'll get anywhere in the world,
She
right?
makes fun of me about this.
But give him a GPS on the phone and he gets lost. He literally got lost coming here. Yes. Coming here, you got lost.
You should just tape a protractor and a string to the front of your dashboard on your car. And you can just
be walking clients down the middle of the freeway, like, all right, left here. Yeah. So, but that was just the start of it, really graduating. And then really the challenging part came once you got in, because you realize that, that's just like the barrier of entry.
Oh yeah.
You actually have to do more of this as you get into the team, and into battalion. So it's your journey just begins. And then for her as well.
Yeah. So continuing with our little journey story, orders to Washington came up. And then I asked him if we could go to Savannah instead. So Savannah is about 30 minutes, again, outside of Fort Stewart where we were. So I was like, it's a much easier move. Let's see if we can go there. I can still be close to my friends that I've already made here. So he requested that, and they were totally okay with it. So we ended up getting stationed in Savannah, so at Hunter Army Airfield.
1st Ranger Battalion, shout out.
Yes, yeah. And so we were there for a year. That's when we bought our first house with a VA loan.
There you go.
So that's what really brought us into knowing about real estate. We were renting before then and just decided to buy. It was cheaper, and VA loan.
That's all we knew at the time. That's all we knew at the time, was that it was cheaper, and that we got a VA loan. And that's again, yeah, part of the reason we got in, because we used it the right way, and we still are in contact with agents that helped us out during that transaction. They're still doing great where they're at. But just the knowledge base that I didn't have, being young and like just going, oh, it's just because it's cheaper, and realizing that, like, 1031 tax deferred exchanges, all these different things that you can do, home equity lines of credit, and ways to build wealth in real estate that can get you ahead when people are feeling so stuck, that we just didn't know at 19, 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. So we bought our first house. Soon after that, we got pregnant with our second. So we got pregnant while he was in Ranger Battalion. And I kind of told him then when I got pregnant, I was like, I don't know, I don't really want to keep going in the military, like on the wife's side. Obviously, I'm not going to divorce him, but I was like, I don't know if I
dual
support
commitment
it.
from the both of you.
It is.
It takes a certain person for sure.
Yeah. I figured he would go, like, not be home when he deployed, right?
Yeah.
But then once we got in, it's just training after training after training. And then RASP came up, and then more training and training. So I didn't realize that he would be gone literally 3 years out of the 4 years that we were in the military. Like, he was hardly ever home. So I just told him, I was like, hey, can we get out? Can we do something else? So he decided to go to AC school, get his AC technician license, and the military paid for that, which was super awesome and helpful.
Yeah.
And then
I actually didn't even know about that. And it's funny how it led in that direction. I wanted to simply just make a little bit more money, because in the military, everything's taken care of for you. And so the baby's being born, like the whole birth process is, it's like you just show your ID and they're like, you're good. So, and then the same thing, they give you food allowance and those type of things. And so getting out, it's like, oh, we're going to have these different expenses. And so the goal was, how do you find a career now that, like, is going to be able to produce for my family? Like we're now, how old were we when I got out? 21?
Yeah, 21.
So like 21 years old with 2 kids. And we're like, oh, this is intimidating, right? So I went to go ask them if they had an electrician school, and they said, no, but HVAC. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means. But then I looked at the salary and I'm like, that works, And so, but it ended up leading us in the right direction for sure, because the connections that we ended up building from getting into that business ended up really transferring over to what we're doing now long term. But
he got his AC license, and came time to us to move. So we sold our house. And I had Deegan by then. Deegan was 3 months old and Zane was 2. And then we drove 5 days across the country back over here. And we landed in Havasu. And I had one aunt who just moved out to Havasu. And then we convinced my mom to retire early. And she moved out to Havasu with us to be with the grandkids. We had the first 2 grandkids at the time.
And we're also the youngest out of either of our families, to have kids, So, yeah, it was cool. That was kind of the goal, I think, was to get closer to California, but it was just unsustainable. Like, at the time, it was like...
Pricing?
Yeah, how do you get ahead over there? And still, like, I have, family that feels that way. It's like the beautiful San Diego weather and the lifestyle, but like mixed with increasing gas prices. And at the time, it just made sense to come to Arizona, and ended up being a really good decision.
Yeah. So we went to Havasu. I got a job at the bank. I worked for Chase Bank. Met some great people there. He worked for an air conditioning company, and we met with an investor. This guy brought in to the bank. He brought in 93 checks, and I was like, what the heck? And so his math was wrong. Right? So you have a deposit slip and then you have the checks. And because there were so many of them, I did it later, but his math was off. So I sat there for almost 3 hours trying to go through each check. And I was like, there's got to be something going wrong, right? So when he came back in to fix it, I was like, what do you do? Like, why do you have all these checks? Yeah. And he just said, he was like, I'm an investor. So I think he owned about 115 doors at the time when we met him. Yeah. So we got in Havasu. Like, Havasu is
everything from, 16 units to duplexes, or I don't think he did a lot of single family, and at the time it was perfect timing, because I was kind of in that position where I was now in a sales position doing air conditioning. And I was very fortunate from that employer to get that position and stuff, but I also fought for it. Like, I was at their door Just like I got my selection papers signed.
Yeah.
It took me a year for them to finally allow me to go to Ranger selection. It's just being at the door 7 days a week, like persistent, annoying until they finally said yes. And so I was able to have a really good position there. But yeah, meeting that investor was huge, because at the time I was in sales and I'm like, okay, I know now I don't have a cap. Like there's no limit now. Every job I've been in since I was 16 working at the grocery store, I've always had this cap of like, I can only make this much per hour. And so it was the first time where I'm going, oh, there's no limit here. And so I started getting really heavy into like learning about investing and listening to podcasts. And I didn't even remember that, like up till 2 a.m, like listening to Grant Cardone and reading articles and learning about the housing market and all these different things. And literally like had a whole room to myself just for like late night studying. I was getting like 3 hours of sleep for like months. I'm like, we got to figure this out. And so she came to me one day and said that she's like, I met this investor and we should get a lunch with him. And at the time it was realistically, I wanted an equity partner. I figured at the time, okay, I work a certain amount of hours. I know I can do all of the work. Right. What if he could provide the funds and we can actually do something big together? Right. And he was an older gentleman, a lot of time under his belt. And he basically was like, absolutely not. Like, I don't know you. I don't trust you. That's not going to happen. Yeah. And so, but he did give us a great idea. And he went, I own this painting company in California. And it's basically been able to fund I've had this 9-to-5 job where eventually I got employees. It's been able to fund my investment career. So you should start like a low barrier venture business like that. And so we literally he gave us the idea for a service business. We're like, oh, what about cleaning? He's like, that's a good idea. And so literally that day we went and got like left the Black Bear Diner in Havasu, went and got like mops, buckets, a caddy. The next day I was on LegalZoom getting my LLC. And long story short, it ended up taking over both of our incomes completely within just a few months.
Yeah, I think it was.
And it was just the basics. Like we were like, we don't know how to do this. We can come up with cleaning packages. Like, what are we worth? We had to figure that all out along the road. But it was really just like, let's answer the phone. Let's be the best people that these people have ever experienced, like speaking to. Mm-hmm. And that was the whole thing that we started with. And it was just referrals from there, kind of built it.
That's sales. Yeah. Answering the phone, being the best resource that an advisor that those people need, answering their questions, solving their problem, doing it with a smile, and being honest and having integrity.
Yep.
That's just being a real
sales
person.
101.
And not just being there for the paycheck. There was so many times, even early on, when we weren't making money. We were like, and there's a whole story before that where we racked up crazy credit card debt in the military and had to pay off like multiple 5 figures of debt within a few months. And so it was fortunate that we were able to do that. But there was times where we didn't know what the next step was, but we still, even if the price was too high or whatever it was, we'd be like, hey, let's take the 5 minutes to refer you to someone else that we know is more affordable. Maybe they do a less service than us, but we know that like we're trying to solve your problem here. We're not trying to get the paycheck. And naturally that just really turned into what ended up being a full-blown business.
Amazing relationships. I'll tell you what, like I met the sweetest people. I loved all of our customers and I was like, oh my God,
your customers become your friends.
They do, like family. Yeah. And it's just amazing. There's one lady who actually has a daughter out here and she comes out here. And the next time she comes out here, I was like, hey, let's get some lunch because I just miss talking with them. So I think that's the biggest thing that we've brought into real estate now is the relationship base.
Right.
I think that business was the first introduction for, at least for me, maybe for you. She played a lot of sports growing up. So she always had like some community, but like actual relationships. I think for me, that was the first introduction into like, oh, this is actually meaningful.
Yeah.
Like this isn't just like business and transactional. There's actually meaning to this.
Yeah.
And when you see, we ended up selling that business. Then when you see people crying when we let them know like, hey, we sold it, and they're like, but no more conversations. And we're like, we're just a phone call. It's like we never imagined that type of thing would have happened from just like, oh, we need to provide for our family at a higher level. And that's what came out of it.
Yeah. So lo and behold, we sold our business to another wonderful couple. Absolutely love them. We have monthly like calls with them and we're close with them.
They're doing a great job. And really the people ask us all the time, like, well, why'd you move out of the business? Or why didn't you just move the business here when that time came? And it was always real estate. Like we believe in real estate so much that we're literally willing to put everything to the side to go get real estate. And that's important to us. So I think at the end of that 3 years, initially it started out with the advice of like, well, just hire some people under the table. And within like the first, we didn't even hire anybody yet. Within like the first customer reaction, we were like, oh, no, we're going to get fully licensed, bonded, insured. And so we ended up starting to pay off our debt. And that really led us in a direction of like building a business and not necessarily taking a quick chunk of cash and buying real estate, like and building our wealth like we wanted. And so at the end of that 3 years, we kind of went, well, is this it for us? Are we going to own a cleaning company for the next 30 years and retire in Lake Havasu and just live that kind of life? Or do we want to go to a higher level? Like what can we really, our potential achieve? And so we just decided, well, we've met so many great people involved in real estate in Lake Havasu. They've all told us we should get into it. We're like, we never thought about the sales portion of it. We're like, well, let's go do that. Right. And then realizing that we had made mistakes with buying our house and we had, used all of our money to fund our move instead of maybe putting it into a better place. It resonated with us to help people now. Yeah. And so, now it's amazing.
And I think we missed a key point in our little journey.
What's that?
Our third child.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
So when we were in Havasu, we had a little girl, Miss Coral May, our spoiled little girl.
She doesn't even look like me. My other two look like identical twins. And when I hold her in the store, they're like, who is this little Italian child that you're holding? But
mama's girl.
100%. That was the trifecta for sure.
Yeah.
Nice.
For sure.
Yeah. So we had Coral. So that was awesome.
Yep.
Crazy experience.
So you guys, I mean, I've heard grit and determination from Bryce going from sleeping on your couch to becoming an Army Ranger.
Yeah.
With the mindset of you just do it.
Yeah.
Which is what you said, 3,500 people in the United States are
at the time. I don't know, obviously, and I'm starting to get in contact with some of my buddies from there a little bit more. Life gets so distracting sometimes, but at the time when I was in, I think there was about 3,000, and that's always hovering because, some people get out like me, some people stay in forever. Some people go to higher levels. Guys I know that are, special forces now, Green Berets, or they're Delta guys, and that's pretty crazy. But there's also people that can't handle it. Because like I said, the hardest part about that is once you get in, the first conversation is like, you're all loud and proud. I'm like 5'8", 100. I've lost like 30 pounds during this course because you're literally just not eating and hiking forever, you know? And so like, I'm this little guy, but chest tall. And the first day they're like, do push-ups. And I'm like, oh, this again, They're like, dude, you haven't arrived. Like you have years to prove yourself. And that really translated into this too. But that was really what it is. It's like and there was a guy, actually her sister's friend in high school when I was sleeping on her couch, who was prior service. And I remember he was a cool guy. Like I have nothing against him, but we had a short conversation one day and he just said, like, I mentioned I wanted to be a Ranger. And he was like, nah, it's not going to happen. And I was like, what do you mean? Because I was watching all these YouTube videos and stuff. And he's like, no, dude, it's like, I've tried to go to the training. It's just not going to happen.
Because he was in the Army.
He was in the Army. Yeah. And he ended up getting injured and stuff.
So he was assuming that you couldn't do it.
Correct. And that's exactly. And so like, I won't say I had a chip in my shoulder, but I've always, probably from upbringing, and obviously there was something that led to me living on her couch, right? Yeah. So like, but through all of that, it's always been this determination of like, watch me, just watch me. And that's what it's always been. And so I always had that voice in my head of like, it was never a rub in your face. I've still never talked to the guy since that conversation. Never, there's been no reason to, know, but it was a mental thing for me. It was a mental win. That was like, I just got ahead because when I got the Tambray, I was like, there's such a small group of people. We start with this massive group and like,
it's 1%.
You start to go.
It's 1% of the Army.
Yeah, it's like the 1% of the 1%. And so, but it's funny because you start and like, you've never been through it before. Like I've never been through SEAL training. I've never jumped out of planes. I've never done any of this stuff before. And so, but you start to see through the days and through the weeks, like someone just walks away or the guy doesn't show up or, whatever it is. You see a guy start crying. And you're just like, oh man, like that's how people fall out. And so it's just this next step of like, let me just not be the next guy that falls out. And so it's like the old Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last. Just like, don't be the last guy. Try to be the first guy. Yeah. And it translates to not only real estate, but people that I talk to every day. Talking to someone yesterday who's in a position that like does not believe has not believed for the last 15 years that she could purchase a home. She's like, there's just no way. Every time, and we had almost an hour-long conversation. She's like, just every time I feel like I want to get ahead, life just punches me straight in the chin. And so it's like just about relating to that through our experiences, through so much that we've done just up to 24 and 25. And being able to sit there when you're talking to someone who's in their 50s and be able to cope with them through that conversation to get to the end goal of like, what do you feel like now? And she's like, I think I could probably buy a home this year. And I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's real cool.
Yeah.
You know? So it's fulfilling. It's all come full circle. And we're just in like the phase one.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, there's so many principles that you guys have learned through your military experience, you're being home by yourself, having to overcome so many things. You know, you're creating a cleaning business from scratch, you know, the relationship building, the customer service,
learning to lead ourselves before we can lead somebody else. Having
10 employees and losing all of them and going through the blame game and all these different things, and then realizing at the end that like, oh, it was us.
Yeah.
It was us the whole time. Like we need to develop ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a constant learning and definitely attention on Bre, because if you ask her honestly, like she was a single mom for those 3 years.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't know how to be a father. I had no idea what I was doing. Just now, like my oldest is 5, and I'm just starting to learn like how to parent and how to like communicate with him because he's growing and understanding the importance of it. And at that time, like when I'm back for a weekend, like I'm like, I just want to sit down and play video games. Like I don't want to do anything. Like I'm exhausted, right? Mm-hmm. And so for her, she took on 100% of that blunt end force. And so it was, shout out to Bre for
thank you
holding it together. Yeah. But now people see us and they're like, they have one kid and they're like, how do you guys just sit at a restaurant and manage 3 children? And like, you guys are having a full conversation about something like, and you guys are just eating hamburgers, you know? And we're like, it's because she has the emotional stability to do it because she reels me in a lot.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I actually have 4 kids. I don't know if you knew that, but I actually have 4 kids.
Yeah. She'll be saying that when I'm 85.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah.
I know. My wife
That was true though.
same.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the same for you, right?
Yeah. It's, I mean, the things you guys have been through already at 24 and 25 is incredible, and it's only going to serve you so much in the future.
Yeah.
I kind of think that there's a somewhat of a comparison between getting in, passing, you know, the Ranger test, and then getting in, like you said, and then the first day you get in, they tricked you like you don't know anything, and you still have all this stuff to learn.
Yeah.
I kind of know, and I don't mean to associate becoming a ranger with becoming a realtor at
You
all,
don't
'cause
have
those
to,
are
but there's a
two
lot of
wildly different things.
similarities
Yeah,
because a
just
lot of people
passing that
look at
exam.
real estate like it's easy because they see the outside in. Oh, these people walking around in suits and all this stuff.
See all the people
oh, what
making
do
the
they
money.
even do?
Yeah.
But once you get into the business or you're a person that works with somebody who's really, really good at their job in real estate, they're like, oh. And there's a lot of things that transfer, a lot of that grit and determination and persistence and all those things.
Yeah.
That's why there's such a large fail rate as a real estate agent. If it's so easy, why are so many people falling out, right?
Have you seen that new reel that's out? And it's like the wording. And it's like real estate agents are kind of like fine wine. You can buy the cheap one, but don't complain about where you wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally, I see that all the time. I'm like, oh yeah.
And also like not to take, because we've met so many amazing people in real estate. Like there's people that were in real estate and are in a different place now, but like so many people have taught us so many things. And real estate's, if you're involved in the right groups, it teaches you so much about yourself. There's so much personal development that goes on too. And so that's the thing is you learn about these things and you start to realize like that's why so many people fall out. But when you actually start to meet the people that make a difference in other people's lives, it all comes from a place of service and contribution, 100%.
Yeah.
And when you meet people that are authentic with that, you can feel it when you're in the room with them. They look at you different. You're like, oh, this is like, this person actually cares about me.
Right.
And so I don't want to take away from the amount of agents or just people in the real estate industry, loan officers, originators, title companies that are like really, really, really good, solid people. Like some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And it's like absolutely insane. But you just have to figure out who the right ones are,
Right.
you know, but a lot of that stuff does translate.
Give and you shall receive, right?
Yes.
The more you give,
Yes.
the more education, the more times you sit down and talk to someone who never thought they could buy a house into
Yep.
showing them the steps and how to do it is just
Exactly.
going to come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people like, it doesn't matter to me whether you are going to purchase next month or literally in 18 years. Like my only thing is just at least let's have a game plan. Let's not be reactive because there's times when you do have to sell a house. There's not really times where you have to buy a house, but there's times where you really, really don't want to sign that next lease, and to just have a game plan. So if it comes up, you're ready. It's the same thing that translates into like fitness. It's like just be fit, be healthy so that you're ready. When you do get some crazy disease, like your body can fight this thing off. When you do end up stranded on the hike, you can make your way back, and it's the same way. So,
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a journey. We really appreciate you bringing us on too.
Yeah.
It's been very cool. It's funny again how relationships work.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
there's so many people in this industry too who are just like so closed off, we found out, and it's just like we were just be open-minded because if you reach out to us, it's just another relationship that's there to build on. And it's another human being that like you could change my life. I could change your life.
Right.
Your wife might change her life and vice versa.
Right.
And so it's been cool how even that relationship has started to develop. So
Right.
we appreciate you bringing us in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has, are you good on time? Do you need to go?
It's 1:37.
We'll be okay. Grandma's watching the kids and she really, really, really wants to go to California.
She doesn't get too many days off.
Shout out to Shelly because she, to be honest, and I'll say this up front because a lot of this is about us and kind of our journey. I don't know how different it would be if her mom wasn't around because not only for the kids, but like she's the one who took me in. Like her parents had split up and don't want to get like too into things, but her parents had split up. And it was her executive decision to be like, I'm going to bring this child into my house and he's going to use some of my income and he's going to sleep on my couch and I'm going to have to teach him. And now I have my daughter and her boyfriend in the same house. Like, so she took on so much of that. And then all the way up to now, like she probably could have worked for a couple more years and got a little bit more retirement. She chose not to do that. But so she does deserve the 4 days in Vegas or California, and
anyways, she's trying to leave and
But we can go a little bit longer. I'm sure she wants us to be able to share a little bit of the experience because she knows that it can help people. We've talked to people already, like the people who bought our business, they were receptive and they wanted to grow. And we presented them with an opportunity that probably changed their lives for the better. And it's just good. You know what I mean? It's just good. Like it feels good. It feels awesome. Like we talk to them and they're like, everything's great. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
That's good. And I know there's challenges going on in the background, but like because of what they're experiencing now, which was just a residual of us like wanting to sell our business and move into something else, created a great opportunity for them. So yeah, but yeah, we can go a little bit longer if you'd like, maybe like another few minutes.
Sure. Yeah. So you're growing up, Bryce is in the military. You're at home with the kids. You guys weren't around each other not a lot. Now you're partners and together 24/7 pretty much.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I met you at the open house.
Yeah.
You're both working together.
Yeah.
We did an open house together a few weeks ago and you're both there. Tell me about what it's like every day to work with your spouse and how you two kind of complement each other in your business.
That's
crazy.
a really, really good question.
Wildly crazy.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because it's something that we never foresaw, right, going into any type of business. And the same challenges that we deal with now are a lot of the same challenges we dealt with in our first business because we were so immature in that business. And just recently, right now, we're in like the baby stages of understanding it and reaching out to mentors of ours and saying like, hey, you were our age, like going through with family and like trying to build a business. Like, how did you communicate with your spouse? And so we're starting to learn tools, but it is definitely challenging at times. And
I have to take Wednesdays off.
Yeah. Well, and our personalities, they complement each other. When you talk to us, like we're super fun. We're positive. We just want to vibe with you. We want you to have a good experience with us. But when you're in problem solving mode, like no one sees behind the scenes. No one sees when, people like me or her or people on our team or great real estate teams that are like dialing for 9 hours straight and like missing lunch for like weeks at a time to find people to help. And so, I have a very, very direct, like driven, like let's go personality. I don't have I don't like surprises. I don't like to wait. I want stuff done now and I want it done the right way. And
Shocking. Sounds like a ranger.
Right.
Yeah, it's very
right.
much.
I wonder where
It's
he
very
got
like
that.
gritty and determination, and I'm a very very intense person. And she's a super hard, like I arguably a harder worker than I am, to be honest. When it comes to like doing the physical tasks, getting on Excel, doing the things, like she's arguably a harder worker, but she's so calm and cool about it. And she's like, I'm
And
like,
he hates it.
This thing's going on, and we need to get this, and this, and this didn't go right, so I need to make this adjustment right now. And she's like, well, we got to get home to the kids, and so it's so different. And so that's the main thing that I've had to do a lot of growth, and I'm still again like an infant in this, is realizing that like, hey, this is my wife first, my business partner second. And so that's a big thing, is just I think if you learn how to communicate in the office, then when you get home, you don't have to talk about it all night at dinner.
Yeah.
And like we've dealt with so many issues that no one sees, with like kids acting out, and we start to realize like, how was I parented as a kid? Right. And probably to the best of whoever's ability it was at the time, whatever. But like, I try to look at that way, and she looks at the way she was parented, and we go, okay, how did they respond to this? Because we know we did that same thing when we were 5. I remember it,
They're
and so how
kids.
did
Kids are kids.
how did we parent, or how did we get parented? And for me, it was like rough, like really rough. You know what I mean? And so we learn different ways to communicate with them, but you start to realize like, oh, this is just a trickle effect of like, my son's acting out, and he just like smacked his sister with a freaking kid's golf club right in the back of the head because he wants attention, but he doesn't understand that negative attention isn't good yet because he's 5, and he's just getting attention because we're sitting at the dinner table for an hour talking about the things that we're dealing with at work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super important to talk about.
I think it's just hurdles. Looking at everything as hurdles instead of like walls. Because it's harder to it's harder to climb over walls than it is a hurdle. A hurdle is just like a jump.
Yeah.
So it's like, look at things easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't look at things so like hard. And that's what I think his biggest thing is, that I like to remind him of, like, hey, it's just another hurdle. It's not a wall. Maybe it's a pothole.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like something that came at us. And now
It's a great mindset.
Because I won't sit at the wall and like bash my head on the wall for very long. Like I will for a little bit, then I'll be like, I'm building another wall. Like I'm gonna build a wall here, and then I'm gonna climb that wall. It's like I'm gonna build a smaller wall. It just makes, sometimes the intensity holds me back.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of becoming, again, when we go back to, we weren't ready to be leaders in our first business when we did our cleaning business, and we did great. Like we did like up to $250,000 in 3 years. Like the financial side was good, but if you really dug into it and you started to like spend some time with us during the day, it wasn't, we didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
And so, I
think we're very fire and ice. And I think that's what complements us.
Yeah.
Like, he is the fire and I'm the ice.
Yep.
For sure. Like, if it was up to me, I would sit on my ass all day long. Like, I would just hang out with the kids. Yeah.
Well,
I'm
because
just
she's
like
very
that chill.
family oriented. She's like, and that's what she did. She was basically like, the income was taken care of in the military. She was a stay-at-home mom. She cleaned the house. She cooked. She hung out with her friends. She went shopping and it wasn't like we had a whole lot of money, but like she spent time with other military wives during the day. And so, absolutely. Yeah. I agree with that.
So he's the fire. So he's like, hey, we need to do this now. And I'm like, okay, let's chill that fire down a little bit. Let me see how I can kind of just like relax my way into it. Yeah. So I think that's also at the same time a hurdle that we are coming over. Yeah. Because he wants it done now and I want it done later. So it's like, how can we meet in the middle? How can we communicate about this? And then adding in the 3 kids too. Like, so many of our friends are just now having like engagements and weddings. And it's like, oh, maybe 1 kid, right? But no, we have 3.
Yeah.
So it's like adding that in. It's all just hurdles.
Yeah.
I like to think about it
But
as
not
hurdles.
walls.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly, not walls.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just takes the same thing as from every other experience that we've had and everything everybody else is going through too. It's like, and that's the biggest thing that I've realized is that, when you feel like you're on the wrong road, that's probably your indicator that you're on the right road. And I don't mean like if you're doing bad stuff, dude, like, if you're doing right or wrong, right? But I'm saying like,
tough,
if you're going down a path that like, your parents or your siblings don't appreciate, or they don't understand because they've never done it before, and you feel uncomfortable, or you're in a place where like, I want to make more money, or I want to get ahead in real estate, or I want to be able to do XYZ, and you just don't know where you're going, that's like, you just need to stay in that place. Stay in that place and just have the grit and determination to be like, let me just keep doing these things that feel really weird right now, and then eventually you'll win. Because for me, even as a parent, it feels weird. It feels honestly weird for me to sit down and talk to my kid with this tone of voice. It feels different.
Yeah.
It's not what I'm used to. I'm used to like intensity being parented. And so it's all comes down to growth. And like through those hurdles, I think too, that's what it is that like she says, meeting in the middle. It's not just like a quick compromise. Like I have to change things about myself in order to meet in the middle. She has to change things about herself. There's ideologies and thoughts that beliefs that we have from growing up and different experiences that we have to change. One of our good friends, Ronnie Doss, again, shout out Ronnie Doss. He's one of the coolest guys. If you guys don't know Ronnie Doss, look him up. He's got books out, but he talks about lenses, you know, and how sometimes you're just wearing the wrong lens and you don't even know it.
That's been a huge thing.
You have like one person's wearing clear lenses and they look at the whiteboard and they're like, what color? Well, it's white. But the other guy's wearing lenses that are green. He's like, it's green. And like, you guys will fight all day about what's right and wrong, but like, you have to put your pride aside and be like, maybe I'm wearing the wrong ones.
That's awesome.
And then you take them off and you're like, oh. And so that's what our thing is we're always checking, like, are we wearing a certain lens? Can we take this off and look differently? Because maybe my experience when I was 8 is translating into how I'm parenting, which is translating to how you feel, which is translating to how we're doing business and how we're showing up for our clients.
Yeah.
And it's this full circle.
That's been a huge tool for us, is reminding ourselves always about lenses. And funny story, I was pregnant with Coral and we went to Ronnie Doss's event, and it was my first time ever being there. And I'm like giantly pregnant, right? And new into business, like while being pregnant with the hormones, dealing with all these employees and issues and the kids and just life, right?
And again, I'm just like, being the driver, I'm just like, I'm out pursuing. I'm like, higher personal growth. Who do I need to meet? Who's going to help me through this? And that's what people need to do.
Yeah.
They need to seek out the right people.
Yeah. So we went to Ronnie Doss's event, and he actually pulled us up to stage, and we sat in front of the whole thing, bawled my damn eyes out.
Wow.
I mean, these are people that are like, some of these people are multimillionaires. Like, it's a privilege just to be invited into this room to hear people talk. But these are people that are successful, and they're crying too because their marriage isn't going well.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? So it was a whole perspective change, I think, at that time as well.
Nice.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. Mom texted me. 1 second.
But yeah, so that's it's kind of crazy how that all comes full circle.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, anyways.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
I definitely want to have you guys back in here.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more to talk about. Let's.
I could talk all day long.
Yeah. Tell everyone how they can find you on social media and what company you're with and how to get a hold of you too for any real estate needs that they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or am I looking at this camera? I don't. Am I supposed to? Okay. Yeah. So we're on Instagram and Facebook. We're under the BD2 Real Estate Duo. You can call Bryce at 760-847-8213. We're on Google. We're on Yelp. And we love to help anybody and everybody who, whether you're a first-time home buyer, you've bought a bunch of homes, or investors, or just not sure what you want to do and you want a game plan, we're here to help.
Yep. Yeah, it's really our passion. Really, it started as, we're going to become the relocation specialist, right? Because like we've relocated a lot. Like we've done a lot of moving, and it's been uncomfortable the whole time. Like, let's be the specialist, and we have become that. We have, but we're also heavily involved in the investment side. And like I said, one day we'll have a conversation with somebody who's a first time home buyer who doesn't think it's possible, and the next day we're talking with somebody who's got 24 rental properties, and he just doesn't know what to do with. He's like, I'm stuck. I'm 75 and I need to retire. How do I do this? And it's like solving those problems. So we kind of do everything as far as real estate, and we're just here to help. We enjoy good company and just quality people. That's the biggest thing. So yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for bringing us on.
Again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Happy to have you guys here.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
We'll do it again.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
All
It's
right.
a privilege. Thank you.